Okay, quick music disclaimer here. I do not own the rights to this music, which belongs to the rightful owner, who is the intoxicating mind of Dr. Frankenstein. So he made my intro and my outro, and I hope you guys enjoy. Check them out on Spotify and YouTube, and no copyright infringement is intended. Have a good day.
A clear choice of good versus evil, of right versus wrong.
Twisted Tales.
Police in Ontario have charged 49-year-old Elizabeth Wettlaufer with killing 5 women and 3 men who were patients at retirement homes. They say the murders occurred in the Crescent home in the town of Woodstock and the Meadow Park home in the town of London. They have accused Wettlaufer of using lethal doses of drugs to kill the patients, although officials declined to say exactly which drugs were used.
There are obviously a number of drugs that are stored and available in long-term care facilities. And subsequent to our investigation and part of the evidence for this particular matter, all I'm able to say at this time is that a drug was administered.
Officials say the victims ranged in age from 75 to 96 years old. The alleged murders occurred between 2007 and 2014. Officials declined to say what the motive for the alleged murders might have been, but did say the investigation continues.
Well, folks, thanks for tuning back into Twisted Tales. Really appreciate that. So I'm going to kick off episode 49 for you. It's going to be a little bit of a doozy, and I hope you guys enjoy. Now, today we're going to talk about Elizabeth Wettlaufer. She was born Elizabeth May Parker, June 10th, 1967, in Zora, Canada. And she went by a few aliases throughout her career. Beth Parker, Betty Weston, just to name a few. So she was a former registered nurse, a really smart individual at certain points, minus her breakdowns and shit like that. But she's probably one of the worst Canadian serial killers out there. Well, she's in jail now, so she's not technically out there. But she confessed to murdering 8 senior citizens and attempting to kill 6 others while working in southwestern Ontario between the years of 2007 and 2016. So that's a total of 14 victims that were either murdered or injured by her. And all these elderly folk wanted was just care and love in their time of need. They didn't need to be fucking murdered. But she only targeted elderly patients, and just the ones that were like extremely sick or had dementia, because you can't really ask them what happened because they have dementia, right? Like, sure, you can believe whatever, but what do you do, right? And so she gave them an injection of insulin. Now, typically, insulin is actually given as an injection under the skin, but it can also be used as an injection into a vein or a muscle. And we'll go into a little bit of a background here on Elizabeth here. So she was born and raised in the Zora Township in a rural community located in Woodstock, Ontario. And this was where she was mainly known as Beth Parker. Now, Zora is a township in Oxford County in southwestern Ontario, and it was formed in about 1975. It's well known for the Highland Games and celebrating the heritage of the Scottish pioneer families. And her schooling career growing up was over par. Like, she was a very smart woman when it came to her schoolwork and everything, right? And she graduated from Huron Park Secondary School in the mid-1980s. And she went on to get a bachelor's degree in religious education counseling from the London Baptist Bible College. Now, originally, Elizabeth wanted to pursue a career in journalism while she was in college, but she had kind of like a fun interest in things like medication and guidance. So she chose to start a career in the medical field, and she studied nursing for 3 years at Conestoga College in Kitchener, Ontario. And she wanted to live out her dream of becoming a registered nurse, which actually became a dream of hers, which she accomplished in 1995. Elizabeth was born in a Baptist home to parents Doug and Hazel Parker. Now, a man across the street was interviewed. His name was Glenn Hart, and he remembers the Parker home. He said, if you're looking for a way to describe the household, think of it as like the 1950s Leave It to Beaver show. It's that kind of scenario. So, that's actually a great show, so I watch that sometimes. Now, he recalls the parents to be very controlling. The Parker household adhered to Christian fundamentalist beliefs. Now, the father, Doug, he had been an elder in a local church, and Glenn Hart came out as a gay man in the 1980s. Now, the church that everybody gathered at, they had kind of shunned Glenn's outing, so they disapproved of his beliefs, and Glenn was actually asked to leave thy church. And as a child, Hart remembers Elizabeth as a shy and very awkward girl, and she took tons of verbal abuse from the other children throughout the neighborhood and throughout her school days. Like, the kids would taunt her, calling her names, and they called her Bethy, and this is a name that she really hated being called. But in her high school years, Elizabeth seemed to do a lot better. She was the goalie on the field hockey team, she was in the musical aspect of things, and she was actually in a couple school bands. But some students actually noticed that she could be a little bit vindictive. Some remember that Elizabeth once pulled a fire alarm in hopes it would get a boy that she didn't like in trouble. She also, at certain points in her life, would struggle with her sexuality, and she once made certain advances to a neighborhood girl, but she was shut down. And she'd keep all her emotions inside and shit, but sometimes it would come out because she would write certain poems from time to time, and some of them were actually pretty good. I'll post a couple in the link here when we're done. But some of these were actually put into her school yearbook. And, yeah, like, she was pretty good with her schooling. She was really smart. She learned a lot. But even, like, the odds of her sexuality, like, during school, like, her parents were fucking hard asses. And this is one thing they disapproved of, much like the disapproving of the gay man in church. Her father actually started taking courses where she was at the London Baptist College just to keep an eye on her, or like keep tabs on her. And Mr. Hart recalled her Elizabeth once being sent home because she was been spotted with a girl at a gay-friendly church. Now, at some point, Elizabeth agreed to undergo a really controversial little process known as conversion, or reparative therapy. This was an attempt made by the family to set her straight. And Hart said that the family actually wanted to un-gay her, and they wanted her to be a straight woman, and with no sexual desires towards the opposite sex. Now, Elizabeth didn't really know how to come to terms in this situation. She told friends that she had little say in the matter, and then she was now starting to live with depression that started to come on, along with some self-loathing and self-doubt. And that's some pretty heavy shit to take on by yourself. Like, a lot of people have depression more so these days, and it's hard going day to day now, man. So, if you're ever feeling down, whatever, pick up a phone, call somebody, whatever, it might help. It's just a thought. So let's swing over to 1995. She was now a registered nurse after her 3-year nursing program at Conestoga College. Now a fully licensed Ontario nurse. So she started her job off at a bunch of placement jobs in Woodstock, Ontario. So this would include helping people with disabilities, and this was set up through a social service agency. She took a full-time job in the town of Geraldton, which is a 16-hour drive from Woodstock, Ontario. And this was like an isolated location, so she was soon returned home. She didn't really like it up there. So upon returning, she still remained sexually confused, and she began to struggle a bit with her life. She married Donnie Wettlaufer, a truck driver. She met him at a Baptist church, and they moved into a bungalow home right off Woodstock's main street. Now during this time, all those struggles of life will come into play. And according to her family, Elizabeth would undergo treatment for borderline personality disorder. And she began to battle a drug addiction, and her nursing license was now in jeopardy due to it being restricted early on in her career for stealing hydromorphine from one of her jobs. Now, at one point, Elizabeth took too much of the drug at one time, and she overdosed fucking hard. But she survived, and this would make her temporarily unable to work, but she managed to pick up the odd shift in a few care homes here and there. So a quick little bit on hydromorphine here. It's an opioid used to treat severe pain, used typically for long-term use, acting on the central nervous system. And with long-term use, like anything, like alcohol, anything, can become habit-forming and cause mental or physical dependence over time. And even her doubts about her sexuality, they began to resurface again during her marriage, and she started to reach out to women online. Now her husband would soon catch her on one of these online relationships, because it started to stem into something deeper. Her husband began to grow confused over this. He grew angry about the betrayal, and he left her. And though her marriage crumbled, her new romance flourished with a new lady friend, eventually moving past the online shenanigans, and they ended up moving into a 2-bedroom apartment across town, and eventually the two became engaged. Now, Elizabeth's parents, still to this day, deny her daughter to be gay, or acknowledge her relationships with women. Her mother described these women as roommates, and said her daughter helped people who were down on their luck, saying her daughter was very kind and helped people in need by renting out the second room to them. But reporters asked her parents what the real reason was that Donnie left Elizabeth, and her mother Hazel replied that Donnie didn't want a sick wife, meaning due to Elizabeth's drug use and other problems, he didn't want to fucking stick around. She wasn't sober. But her parents even downplayed her drug addiction too, calling them medical mix-ups or stress-related problems. Elizabeth continued on with her relationship with Sheila Andrews, and they continued living in the apartment, everything, and needing more money to support her and her partner. Elizabeth took a job at the Crescent Care facility, so this would be in 2007. Now, with tons of nursing experience under her belt, pretty much a little over a dozen years, Elizabeth excelled at diagnosing blood sugar problems and injections of insulin. It's a simple enough task. Insulin cartridges are inserted into a pen, and on the other end's a needle and a dial. So the hospital didn't really keep the best track of its insulin supply. If any went missing, nobody was the wiser. And Elizabeth started taking a little extra here and there, so she could figure out the correct dosage, enough to kill a person. And this is something that she was intrigued about for a very long time. She described this process as dialing up. Now, this would administer a huge amount of the drug into somebody's body. She'd find a secret spot in the patient's body, and this would cause the drug to run through the veins, sending the patient into hyperglycemic shock, or a blood sugar crash. And it wasn't even days after being hired by the hospital that her first victim, Clotilde Adriano, an 88-year-old woman, was struck with a needle containing the high volume of the dose. And she survived this incident because she was mainly just a test subject, and the staff actually noticed her failing health and restored her blood sugar levels to normal. And like I said, they were like kind of the test subjects, right? So she could find the right dose of insulin that was used to kill a person. She didn't really know the correct amount, so she had to keep messing around with it. And she continued on with the trial runs. She actually picked Adriano's sister-in-law. This was Abina Dimidiros. She was also a survivor. And Elizabeth mentioned about, after being apprehended by police later on, that she didn't intend to kill Adriano, but some of her victims would actually stroke out, as she put it. The bodies would contort, vital organs would shut down, and death would only take a few hours in some cases. In other cases, the victims would actually lay in a vegetable-like state for a few days. Now, it was about 3 months into her work term. She was actually finally able to kill a patient. They asked her to care for an elderly 84-year-old named James Wilcox. He was a World War II veteran, and this guy had actually lost his mobility due to a stroke. And this guy had been through it all in World War II. He bared the most violent years of that war, just to meet the end from some fucking psychotic nurse. Guy lived through all that shit. Now, Elizabeth worked a double shift that night. This was August 11th, 2007. The patient was very agitated that night, totally unaware of his surroundings, and he was actually calling out for his wife. And that's a terrible thing. It's a fucking sin, to be honest with you. Now, Wettlaufer began to grow impatient with him. This was around 9:30 p.m. She walked into the medical storage closet, put up her insulin pen with about 50 units, and this was about a dose, twice the amount that she'd previously given to Adriano and her sister-in-law. And she shot the insulin into Silcox's body. Before the poor guy slipped into unconsciousness, the guy was like, "I'm sorry. I love you." And still to this day, it's not sure who that was addressed to. Possibly his wife. Who knows? But that's a fucking sad state. And it's a terrible end for anyone, and especially somebody that's supposed to care for you. And they're secretly fucking killing people. Not cool. Now, December 23rd, 2007, Maurice Granite, an 84-year-old man, father of two, and he was a lifelong mechanic from Tilsonburg, Ontario. He was injected with the overshot of insulin and passed away at the hands of Elizabeth. So the next 7 years, from December 2007 to 2014, she would continue on with injecting elderly patients. And these deaths, they weren't instant, like most people think. The victims would have massive drops in blood sugar, causing, making them become confused, pale, sweaty, irritable, shaky. It had their heart rates going up. And it would make them weak, and then they would eventually slip into a coma. And, these people in their prime lives, they were average Canadians, World War II veterans, tradesmen, churchgoers, restaurant workers, you name it. It just seems to me that it just sucks that they met their end by such a heartless monster. Helen Matheson, a 93-year-old woman from Innerkip, Ontario, a sweet lady. She was injected and killed on October 25th, 2011 by Elizabeth. Elizabeth even went out of her way to bring her blueberry pie and ice cream. Wettlaufer remembers her saying, "Ow," as she injected her with a needle. So, that night, she tried to make, her murder, sweeter, maybe, by bringing in her favorite things. Trying to put her at ease, maybe. Then the other victim, Gladys Millard, was an 87-year-old, and she was injected on October 13th, 2011. A widowed mother of two, and originally from Nova Scotia. So, she grew up to where I was around. November 6, 2011, she fatally injected a 96-year-old named Mary Zurowinski at the care home. July 13th, 2013, she murdered 90-year-old Helen Young with a fatal dose of insulin. On March 22nd, 2014, she killed 79-year-old Maureen Pickering. She did this with the insulin shot, and Maureen was actually from Tillsonburg, Ontario. August 23rd, 2014. She killed 74-year-old Arpad Horvath, and this was at the Meadow Park facility in London, Ontario. He was actually the owner of a Central Tool and Die, a company of London, and those are the people on whose lives she decided to take. And there were ones that she injected, but not fatally. And even that's just as bad, because she used these people as test subjects to figure out the fatal dose for other people that she wanted to kill. And these people didn't deserve that. Like, who the fuck is she to play God all of a sudden, right? And it'll all come crumbling down soon, though, folks. And the names of the ones that she didn't fatally inject were Michael Priddle, age 63, Wayne Hedges, age 57, Beverly Bertram, age 68. She was from Ingersoll, Ontario. 27-year-old Sandra Towler. This was at Telfer Place Retirement Home. And the two ladies mentioned earlier, Clotilde Adriano and Albina Demideros. I really hope I say these names correct. I quit butchering them. But those were all the people that she killed, and the ones that she almost harmed. And all those people, like, they just wanted somebody to look after her. Look after them. They didn't need to be killed this way. And even while Wettlaufer was working at Crescent Care Home, she was the one responsible to alert the authorities of questionable deaths that happened on her watch. She'd be the one to checklist and outline anything out of the ordinary that caused the residents to die. So basically, the system allowed her to report her own crimes, and she wasn't going to rat on herself. Her mind was so far gone with thoughts of being caught or losing control, and even her drug addiction while on the job took a factor. She told authorities that she was never high at work, but one colleague told them that they found her passed out in the basement of Crescent Care while working a night shift. And even by Elizabeth's own admission, she said that hydromorphs were the drug of her choice. She used them several times a month, and eventually she'd lose all control and become heavily addicted to them. Because hydromorphine is usually accessible at a lot of care facilities, but closer tabs are kept on those meds than the insulin she was stealing. But she found more ways to steal the drug from her patients. It's a shit thing to do. And these folks are elderly. They live in constant pain. They need those meds to keep the pain minimal. Because living in pain sucks. I do it all the time. My back's a mess. So it's not easy, like, maneuvering, and I get the whole pain factor. Trust me. But the patients that she stole from, they wouldn't notice at all. Like, she said that she could give them a laxative or a hydromorph. It wouldn't matter. They'd never notice the difference. But the reason why they couldn't tell the difference between the pills was mainly due to their dementia and confusion. Elizabeth would even go to great lengths of opening up her patients' pills, swallowing the powder inside, and giving them an empty capsule. And she'd also stole pills from the people who had died at the care facility. Elizabeth even monitored, like, all the new drug supplies coming in, and if they weren't put away in a timely fashion, she'd actually get into them. Nobody would notice any missing pills for weeks or months, and when police or anyone would actually phone or talk to her about the missing meds, she said she would just play dumb. The hydromorphs made Elizabeth more relaxed, and she felt that she had to be the best person she could be, and taking the pills took this pressure off. Now, being the best person that she could be, what you would do originally is take care of your patients and not fucking kill them. But she was suspended 4 times for making non-insulin related medical errors. She would eventually be fired from the Crescent Care Facility in March 2014. And by that time, they kind of noticed the people that died under her watch, and the Crescent Facility forwarded and reported her mistakes to Ontario's College of Nurses. But no action was taken. It remained like a private matter. So a few weeks after being fired, she was interviewed for Meadow Park long-term home. And they had about 120 patients there. In the job interview, it was asked what the reason was for her termination, and Elizabeth said that she was fired for making medicine errors. The facility told her that they believe in second chances and offered her a one-year contract on evening shift. Now, Meadow Park maintained that they actually checked all her references, because by the time she was arrested and everything, they went back and, checked each facility out. And this was about a month into her contract at Meadow that she actually killed Arpad Horvath with the lethal dose of insulin, and that made it her eighth victim in total. So Wettlaufer realized now that she could no longer control her urges, as she now had a need to kill, and her drug addiction grew, and actually she started drinking very heavily on hard alcohol. She quit her job at Meadow Park just to get help for her opiate addiction, and she was driven to a care facility by her mother. This was a rehab facility in Port Colborne, Ontario, and she only stayed in this facility for about a month. So, in early 2015, this would be about 2 months after getting out of rehab, Elizabeth began working part-time at care homes around the Woodcock, Ontario area. Now, working at Tefler Place, she injected Sandra Towler, who was actually suffering from dementia. She did this with a high dose of insulin, sending her into hyperglycemic shock. But Sandra was actually saved by other staff members because they found her suffering in bed. Now, as Elizabeth was picking up temp jobs, she picked up a job at St. Elizabeth Healthcare, but this time it was different. And this was 2016. So St. Elizabeth had proposed her replacement at a school program in Ingersoll, Ontario, because they needed help with treating children with diabetes. Now, her roles would include monitoring the children's insulin pumps, just to make sure that they received the right amount. And who better to do this job than a registered nurse who had been giving these shots for years? Now, Elizabeth knew that she wouldn't be able to control her urge to kill, so she passed on this opportunity. So, I guess children is where she draws the line on killing. Now, on August 19th, 2016, Elizabeth made the decision to walk away from nursing altogether, and she had very few places to turn. So up until this point, police had no investigations into this case, and it seemed that Elizabeth, in her own way, she tried to confess her crimes in the past. So in her doing this, she knew right from wrong. To some, she was very polite, funny, and kind to a lot of people. But she could also be very manipulative, very calculating, and full of deceit. Just like all serial killers are, like they'll put on a front, right? They'll only let you see the side that they want you to see. So since she was jobless, Elizabeth decided to seek psychiatric help. She left her apartment to check into an institution. Now, she went to the Woodstock train station. It took about a 2-hour train ride. She checked into the emergency ward at the CAMH. C-A-M-H. This was the Center for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto. So once she checked in, she blabbed to anyone that would listen about her crimes with oodles of disturbing details. And this info would eventually get back to police. It would get them involved and get this whole fucking case rolling in a big way. So, her psychiatrist, Dr. Alan Kahn, he told her that she should write down her thoughts, and anything that she revealed will be turned over to police. Then he warned her of this. So now, with her doing this, it kind of makes me think, like, was she just stricken with guilt over all her crimes? She couldn't take it anymore? Guilt will fucking eat at you. But she wrote a 4-page handwritten confession. And this had all the details on who she killed, who she harmed, and when it happened. And not remembering all her victims' names, but she detailed enough that the crimes would be enough to investigate. And the rehabilitation center notified police shortly after this. The nurse at the center actually went with police to give them a recorded statement, and this was at the local police department. The police got in touch with her. They got in touch with Woodstock Police, the London, Ontario Police, and they told them that a huge investigation was about to be going down and everybody would be involved. Now, she also wanted to reveal her crimes to Ontario's College of Nurses, and she actually surrendered her nursing license. This would be on October 5th, 2016. She was actually discharged, and police still wanted to fuck around with her confession and work on that. So, pouring through all the death notices, the medical records, all that stuff, eventually they began to piece together names to the victims, nurse logs of the nights, and who were around the victims and who worked on those shifts. Elizabeth knew she was fucked. Because this investigation went on, she actually agreed to a court order which prevented her from possessing insulin or entering or going into any long-term care homes. Now, a search of her home went underway. Police took lots of boxes of evidence, her computer, so she knew this was going to be a gong show, because police were everywhere in her home. One detective actually remembers her asking, "When I go home, will my place be a mess?" Now, Elizabeth was actually arrested, and she was charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder. Police would later add on the other counts of attempted murder, so that was 4, and then the 2 counts of the aggravated assault on October 25th, 2016. Now, no trial came from this, from all the sentencing and everything, because she pled guilty to all charges on January 13th, 2017. She didn't overly give any explanation for the killings, and only spoke briefly upon sentencing. She never looked at the victims' families at all. But, however, she did speak into a microphone, and this was placed in front of her in the prisoner's box. So she read a short little statement. Quote, "I have caused horrendous pain. Sorry is too much a small word. I hope that the families can find some peace and healing." And on June 26, 2017, she was sentenced to 8 concurrent life terms in prison with no eligibility for parole for 25 years. Now, in her confession, she admitted that she knew right from wrong, but was visited by surges that she could not control. Said that, the God or the devil or whatever wanted me to do it. She never claimed to derive pleasure from the killings, and she stated that she felt horrible after murdering each victim. But, she continued to do it, right? So Elizabeth was held at Grand Valley Institution for Women in Kitchener, Ontario in March 2018. She was transferred from Grand Valley to an unspecified secure facility in Montreal for medical treatment. But the victims' families kind of got wind of this, and they're like, "Well, why the fuck did you move her without telling us where she went? We need to know where she's at, right?" So this was at the Philip Pinel Institute in Montreal. That's where she was moved to. Now, that pissed a lot of people off, but they ended up getting the correct calls and getting the information that they needed. So I'll toss a clip on that in a second here. And like I said, all her victims were all elderly people, and it's a shame that they went out like they did. A nurse or any medical staff are supposed to help and protect you in your time of need, right? You trust them with your life, and sometimes trust, it's not always there when you need it. Now, a little more into this. The Attorney General of Ontario, Yazir Naqvi, and Eric Hoskins, the province's Minister of Health and Long-Term Care, announced that on the day of Wettlaufer's sentencing, that the provincial government would make a public inquiry into her case. Quote, "They wanted to get the answers that they needed to ensure that a tragedy such as this does not happen again." Now, the College of Nurses of Ontario also charged Wettlaufer with professional misconduct. This was by a disciplinary panel convened by the CNO on July 25th, 2017. So the CNO is the College of Nurses of Ontario. Now, even though Elizabeth was found guilty in a criminal trial, and she voluntarily surrendered her nursing license, this formal hearing was required for the College of Nurses to officially bar her from her nurse profession. Wettlaufer declined to participate in this hearing and was found guilty on court documents from her trial and her own confession. So her conduct was deemed disgraceful and dishonorable by the disciplinary trial. Her nurse's registration was formally revoked indefinitely, barring her from ever practicing nursing in Ontario again. And they said this was the most disgraceful conduct that this panel ever considered. And this case was really hard to do. It took me, I had it written out. I didn't like it. I rewrote it. I researched again. And then I ended up working for like a lot of days, so I didn't really have time to mess with it again. But today I did, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. It took me some time. But, you know, she's in jail now for her crimes. And it's sad that lives were ruined in this. All the heartache and shit that it caused the family. And drastic measures, I'm sure, are now put forth. Going forward, you know? I mean, I know she tried to confess her crimes to a few people, but nobody took her seriously. And this seems to happen a lot in certain cases. I noticed this happened when I covered the Robert Pickton case. There were like prostitutes and stuff that knew what was going on, but they wouldn't talk to police. And he just kept killing. So it's a really hard situation. But even like this is only a few years ago too. But in reality, like, who's gonna suspect a nurse? It's like one of the most trusting professions on the planet. And I'm just gonna go through like a couple ways that maybe she could have been stopped. Like, there should have been like controls on the insulin, like, you know, because she killed with insulin. So nobody in the facilities usually checked the supply. So she could use as much as she wanted. It was just lack of follow-up, I find, for the medication, right, that was used. Like, quantity made it very easy for her to kill whoever she wanted. Now, like, more medication room oversight, that could maybe have had some play into it. Like, if they would have had nurses there with her, like, a nurse accompany her into the room, or like a doctor get the medication for them, like the doctor stays in the room, she comes in, signs out. It would be harder to steal shit then. You know, or maybe like a key card system, so it shows like who scanned in, what time they got there, what time they left, and like a little chart to sign some names or something, right? Just shit like that I think of, but that's it. That's all I got for you guys, so I really hope you enjoyed this tale. And I got another one in the works here I'm working on for my buddy Chris Curry. So this one's going to be about a crazy life of a wrestler. And strange little tale indeed, but we'll get into that when the time comes. So thanks for tuning back into Twisted Tales, guys. I mean, I appreciate the follows on Spotify. 'Cause if you guys rate me, you know, it gets me going a little bit more. So if you could do that, I'd appreciate it. You can check me out on I'm on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music app. So there's plenty of places to listen if you want. So thank you very much for tuning back in, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you so much for tuning back in, man. I appreciate all your guys, like, even your little, like, emails I get. I get, like, 2 people emailing me a day for stories, so that's awesome. It means, like, I'm probably doing good at this. So thanks. Take care, guys. Appreciate you guys switching back on Twisted Tales.
Convicted serial killer Elizabeth Wettlaufer has been transferred from a prison to a hospital in Quebec. Some of her victims' families notified earlier this year about the move, but not told exactly where she'd gone. This week, they've been told she's at a secure psychiatric facility in Montreal. The family about who found out about the location just yesterday.
Daniel Silcox's father, James, was Wettlaufer's first of 8 murder victims. Silcox became upset when Corrections Canada wouldn't tell him exactly where Wettlaufer was moved to, so he decided to take action on his own.
Former nurse Elizabeth Wettlaufer admitted to killing 8 seniors under her care. She was convicted last year and sentenced to life in prison. Wettlaufer was placed at Grand Valley Institution for Women in Kitchener. Wettlaufer's first victim was James Silcox. Earlier this year, his son was told Wettlaufer was being moved to Quebec for medical reasons.
I started getting very curious as to why she was gone for so long for medical purposes. I contacted Victim Services.
Silcox says last week he was told by Corrections Canada they couldn't disclose Wettlaufer's exact location.
There are a lot of families involved, and they're not telling us where she is. This was totally inappropriate, not fair, was not right.
Silcox went to the media with his concerns. Wednesday morning, Silcox says Corrections Canada called him, letting him know Wettlaufer is at Institut Philippe Pinel in Montreal. The secured psychiatric hospital runs under a model with no armed guards and no traditional prison guards. But now he's worried Wettlaufer may have access to internet, music, and sports.
Bars would be a nice touch. She does not have the sense that she is incarcerated. That's my fear right now. If she were to say, gee, it's lovely in here, I would not be happy.
Silcox says he's conflicted, acknowledging Wettlaufer is mentally unwell but concerned, feeling like she's being groomed for a possible early release. Wettlaufer was sentenced in June of 2017 to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. We'll have more reaction on this story tonight at 6. Nancy.
Nicole Lampa in the newsroom.
A brief glimpse of the accused. Elizabeth Wettlaufer's 9-year killing spree came down to a 1-minute statement in court. Families of the victims torn apart by listening to her, but desperate to understand what happened.
That's why I'm here. I want to gain some understanding as to why she did what she did.
First, there were impact statements in court from family members. The murder fills us with hatred and rage, said one. It's a nightmare you can't wake up from, said another. The judge said Wettlaufer was far from an angel of mercy, but was the shadow of death that passed over the victims. Wettlaufer, a nurse, admitted killing 8 seniors as old as 96 with insulin injections, telling police she felt a red surge of rage towards her helpless victims. Today, with little emotion, Wettlaufer read a statement. I caused tremendous pain, suffering, and death. Sorry is much too small a word. I am extremely sorry. That did nothing to relieve those haunted by the horror of what happened to their loved ones.
I saw no remorse, obviously. This is the woman you have to remember. When she killed my grandmother, she went on a cruise the next day.
And I saw that she saw the hatred in my eyes. And I think I did get through to her in some small way.
Today, the Ontario government announced a public inquiry. That such a murder spree could happen undetected has seriously damaged trust in a system that's supposed to care for the most vulnerable.
The system has to be more monitored, and it's not being monitored.
Stronger oversight in the future is cold comfort to some.
That will be the only good thing that comes out of this, is that we will have some kind of protection for our parents and us as well.
There is no one way to cope with such pain and tragedy. Many will never forgive. Some will try.
To get any inner peace from the whole thing, I have to forgive, or I'll never find inner peace.
She meted out a death sentence to people that she didn't like.
Twisted Tales.